Well, I wanted to give you an update about the coronavirus and what we can understand with the numbers we have now. Well, first of all, I would like to discuss a little bit the situation we had on the Diamond cruise ship, who was close to Japan, with one case that started there, and then it ended up with almost 700 cases. Well, that shows us, at least in my opinion, that shows us that in close environment, this virus spreads very easily. Because we started with one patient and we ended up with 600, exactly 691, almost 700. But that means that, in my opinion, it spreads quite easily. And what does that mean in terms of prevention? Well, that means that as long as we don't gather in crowds, everything that can avoid crowds will do a big difference on how the epidemics goes. So that's very important. I think that when governments are trying to stop sports games, crowded environments, they're doing a very good job, because that really stops the spreading. And for me, I wanted to see what the ship would show us, because the ship is a very good realistic experiment. You had one case, then almost 700, only 3 deaths. This gives us a death rate of 0.43%, which is low. But you'll see now that this is not the case for what we have in the world right now. What do we have now when we don't think of China regarding coronavirus? We have almost 2,700 cases all over the world. The mortality, we've had 42 patients who have died. The calculations with these deaf people show us that the mortality rate is 1.5%, which is a lot more than what we were having before. And with this amount of cases, at least we can know that this number is not probably far from reality. Unfortunately, when we do the calculation of mortality, we need to know the real number of cases. And we still don't really know this, because some people might have the corona, very few symptoms, they do not go to the doctor, and they don't even know what they're going through. So unfortunately, this is a rough estimate for this epidemic. And we'll know a lot more as time goes by. And this is why it took me a lot more days to give you more news, because I was waiting to have more important information to update you with calculations that might be more accurate. So we have a mortality rate for the world of 1.5%. But a few things are strange with this mortality rate. First, in Italy, we have 283 cases with 7 deaths. Mortality rate 2.4. In Korea, almost 1,000 cases, 10 deaths. Mortality rate 1%. In Iran, 95 cases, 16 deaths. This is almost 17% death rate. So a few things are strange there, because they don't fit in what we could consider a rational thinking. It's very strange to have 17% of mortality rate in Iran, and on the ship only 0.43. In the world, 1.5. But this 1.5% might be contaminated with this extremely high rate we have in Iran and even Italy. Another thing is that in China, when we take the province of Hubei, mortality rate now is 3.9%, a little higher. It used to be 3. And where we used to have for the rest of China 0.55, now we have 1.1%. So that means that probably we have a mortality rate around 1 to 1.5%, which is quite high, because with H1N1, the mortality rate is 0.10, 0.13, 0.15. So that's for Corona, it's almost 10 times more. But let's not forget that we have vaccines and treatments for H1N1. So that produces a big difference. But anyway, I think two conclusions can be done at this time. First, it spreads quite easily. What does that mean? That means that avoiding crowded places is a good idea. Second, mortality rate probably is around 1%, 1.5%. And we'll have to wait more data to understand what's going on in Italy and Iran. It's extremely important to know who's dying and why they're dying. In Iran, we have an astonishing number of deaths for the amount of cases. And in Italy, we're close to what happens in Hubei, which is something strange. So let's wait a little bit more, and I'll give you more updated information as soon as we can understand a little better what's going on. With new epidemics, we need to wait to understand how it's behaving and what is going on. Otherwise, we say a lot of bad things. The basic thing I think is that we have to have good and sound information, and we have to be very careful with the information we get. The information I'm giving you comes from Johns Hopkins University, and it's really updated, and I'm just discussing the numbers to try to understand them. But we still need to know a lot more about this virus. We probably will have a vaccine in 1 year, and when we have the vaccine, everybody will get the vaccine, and it will be something like H1N1. So I think it's a matter of concern. But no matter, I don't think we need to be horrified with this coronavirus, at least not now. Let's see what goes on in the next week, next 10, 15 days, to have a better and clearer picture of what is going on and what governments can do. But basically, to summarize, two things are important. Avoid crowded places and check who's dying and why they're dying. This is very important to understand if it's very serious and who is more prone to having the serious disease with coronavirus. Thank you.